Both Bill Christopher and I wanted to move to the country, and we really didn't like Brooklyn, so we got out as soon as we could. We found that we knew people around here, and land was $20 an acre, so we decided to start it here as a summer house. I used to go see my mother every day. She'd been bedridden for quite a while, and I didn't really feel I should leave Brooklyn. I lived around the corner from her, but when she died, Bill Christopher and I decided to come here and live.
When Tooker and Chris moved to their home in Vermont in '59 and in '60, Chris began teaching at Dartmouth. And so I think that supported them. And you know, Tooker, although he was not in the limelight like he was in the '40s, he's always had an audience. I think he's always sold paintings. There's never been an issue when he hasn't sold paintings. And also, he lives pretty simply. I mean, I don't think he was after being a superstar.
What's interesting is to consider the artist's entire body of work, especially when you know that he's only created less than 200 works in his entire career.
The public protest pictures are a small percentage of his output, and all along Tooker was making pictures alongside those that represented yet another aspect of humanity. They're essential to understanding this total worldview that Tooker had.
I tend to have more spells of painting protest pictures, or a spell of painting loving pictures, pictures about people caring for each other.
There's a quote that I like to recount, that in some of my pictures I'm saying this is what we're forced to suffer, in others this is what we should be. I oscillate between an earthly state and a state of paradise.
The pleasant ones are about community, the unpleasant ones are about the opposite. After Chris died, I started going to the Episcopal service in the Catholic Church. And I got used to going there, and I met Father Ruel, the priest, and we became good friends. And so I started going to Catholic services there. After Mass, one Sunday, Father Ruel said, I've noticed that you look serious. And I said, I am serious, Father. And he said, well, then I don't see any reason to wait. I'll confirm you right on the spot.
So Father Ruel asked Tooker if he would contribute something to the rebuilding of this Catholic church that burned in a fire later in the 1970s. So he painted a Seven Sacraments altarpiece, not taking any money for it whatsoever. It was Tooker's contribution to the rebuilding of the church. Father Ruel is actually the priest figure who's raising the chalice up in the center panel of the painting. And then a few years later, Father Ruel asked Tooker to paint a Stations of the Cross.
After his conversion to Catholicism, he talks about doing the Stations of the Cross, and that he didn't want to image Christ because he didn't want to offend anyone. He said everyone has an image of Christ in their head, and I didn't want to create an image that made someone feel alienated from Christ. So he used his hands because he felt hands were equally expressive. I think that's probably something that is pervasive throughout his career, this desire to create images that everyone can relate to on some level. The way art history has been told for so long is that the focus was on figurative painting and the American scene painters. After World War II, the abstract expressionists sort of had a monopoly on the art world, and in some sense they did. They certainly had a monopoly on what was considered serious and pertinent art making. What art historians have more and more realized is that this figurative tradition didn't just die. I mean, that in fact it continued, and Tooker is part of that.
I loved painting figures. And I got a great deal of pleasure out of painting figures.
These are open-ended, very carefully articulated compositions that really allow for the visitor and the viewer's experience to complete it and also make it meaningful.
I think that, in fact, the more we discuss paintings, the more we argue about interpretation, the more the picture sort of means things and it lives on.
All of his paintings are important statements for the artist, and he confessed to us that, you know, he does not paint a picture unless he's got a really fully developed idea of what he wants it to be and what he wants it to say. Now, understanding what it is that it's saying can sometimes be a bit difficult because the works are very enigmatic.
So much is subconscious in my work. I rely on instinct rather than reason.